It was a dream in people's eyes. You couldn't produce it back then. It's Canadian technology and Canadian innovation.
They finally admit it. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today we got Mark Carney and his whole gang going on a whole bunch of different media, mainstream media all over the place. And there's one interview where Tim Hodgson admits, he says the quiet part out loud about what is one of the most valuable things in Canada. Can you guess what it is? We also got Carney getting nailed on his conflicts of interest. He has made millions of dollars, way more money than you think, since becoming Prime Minister. Let's jump into this. Okay, let's roll through this. We've got a whole bunch of updates here. First off, this article's been getting its rounds here. 6 in 10 Canadians, 58%, approve of the Liberal government's performance under PM Carney. So this is a poll that came out from Ipsos, and now the Liberals and the left have been just running with this as if this is some sort of gospel speak representing all Canadians, when in reality, if you look at the actual chart, the data, the numbers here, what you'll see is a soft bias towards the Liberals. There's 1,001 people that were chosen for this survey. You can see 461 men, 533 women. We know that more women vote for the Liberals than the Conservatives. There's already a slight bias there. You also look at the education. You have less than high school. You have high school, post-secondary, and university grad. And we see that there's a more heavy bias to the highly educated university graduates, which also favors Liberals. Just these two biases alone, and they're not huge, but they are a bias for sure. I mean, high school educated 150 versus 395 for university graduate. That already tilts this poll to favor the Liberals. So here we have the media running that poll, touting it as it's some sort of holy grail. Ipsos poll with PM's returning Carney government has decade higher approval. Get out of here. As I showed, the data is swayed towards Liberals. This is a one-off poll with skewed data. Got an update on this one. This is a terrible story. This is the story of this little girl that was run over by a 70-year-old man in a daycare. He crashed into the daycare. Well, it turns out the guy who crashed in there was Vinay Kumar Gupta of Richmond Hill, required a Hindi interpreter to help him with the proceedings. This is some guy from the other side of the planet, didn't know how to drive his vehicle, who knows what happened, drove into a daycare. The Liberals let these people just flood into our country, and they're quite literally ending the lives of toddlers. This is despicable. If I was this man, I would not be able to hold it together. I can't even fathom the pain that they're going through right now. We got Donald Trump coming out with this. He's looking into RICO charges against George Soros over radical left funding. If you don't know George Soros, he's the money behind the Palestinian protesters. He's funding that. Trump plans to investigate the Soros family for potential RICO violations. Uh-oh. Got this one from CTV. Mexico trip kicks off globe-hopping travel season for PM Carney. That's right. Time to get out of the house. Wouldn't want to have to debate Pierre Poilievre now, would he? I'm not sure if he's out of the house for the rest of the week. He's just one day and he's out. If that's the case, that's pathetic. All this clown does is fly around spewing carbon while he expects Canadians to do without. Didn't Parliament just reconvene? Yeah. He's scared of Pierre Poilievre. If he doesn't show up to the house tomorrow, that is why. He is terrified of the man. Got this one from the Toronto Star. Says, we knew he was a blue Liberal, but Mark Carney is alienating progressive voters. It looks more like Carney simply misunderstood the mandate he was handed by his own voters. So I don't subscribe to the Toronto Star, so we can't read this article, but this is funny. They're starting to eat themselves here. Got this one from Mark Carney himself. Grateful to NORAD Command for swift response. What is he talking about? We have fighter jets scrambled over Calgary's airport earlier today after a pow-pow threats were reported on 3 incoming flights. This is the state of Canada. Nobody believes our elderly PM is awake at 11 p.m. Meanwhile, we've got this one. The Conservatives put forward a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk, and the Liberals said no. They voted against this. And it wasn't just a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. It was also a moment to push back against political violence. And the Liberals said no. Despicable. They're all for that political bad times, aren't they? There's been a lot of talk of the economy, also a lot of talk of housing. We've got Kate Harrison here reinforcing what I said yesterday. The 4,000 new homes is nothing. It's not going to do anything to move the needle.
Home building, the announcement from yesterday. That is going to create a 0.1% of what CMHC says we need in terms of housing, the 4,000 units that the government has committed to. That is going to not even come close to that macro level target. And on defense spending, we are playing catch up massively to what other nations have done. And it's not just the last government, it's been successive governments, and I want to acknowledge that. But for Canadians who are going to see that deficit number likely in the tens of billions of dollars, how does that actually improve their day-to-day affordability, their day-to-day cost of living challenges? Those 3 things in particular really will not pass the test, in my view, of what Canadians are expecting this government to do in a moment of crisis, which again was a crisis moment defined by the Prime Minister. He was the one who who intimated urgent action. So he can't now walk that back because governing is a lot harder than campaigning.
Ooh, yeah, not only that, then he went on vacation after said is the greatest crisis in Canadian history, and Donald Trump, boogeyman, all that. But we look at the bigger numbers. Mark Carney's plan was not just 4,000. There's also, that's moving up to 45,000 homes, I believe is the number. And let's just use that number, 45,000 homes that they want to add, which is not doubling the 250,000 per year to 500,000. That's adding 45,000. Even then, there's roughly around 4,200 people coming into Canada every single day. Temporary foreign workers, mobility program, immigrants, study permits, which equates to 10 days. If they build all 45,000 houses this year, that's only 10 days of the people they're bringing in. It doesn't account for the backlog. It accounts for 10 days. And say half those people go home at some point. 20 days. It accounts for 20 days of all these people coming in. We have to shut the door because we have a backlog to fill. They're not addressing the situation, and they know this. They've lined everything up to make money off of the whole situation. And by the way, if you want to get to net zero, the worst way of doing it is bringing in a whole bunch of people, because people require resources and increases the carbon load. Which brings us to Tim Hodgson here. I can't believe he said this on CBC. Listen to this. He slips this in here. One of the most important things, one of the most valuable things in the world. What do you think it is?
So does that mean then that if you get the Pathways carbon capture project at scale and you get, say, methane regulations, that the emissions cap then isn't necessary? It goes away as a policy instrument, it becomes more flexible as a policy instrument, or is it commitments to methane reduction and carbon capture enough to satisfy the targets?
So what the Prime Minister said, he's focused on results, not how we get there. I think the comments from Premier Smith speak for themselves. We're finding a way to get to a place where all Canadians want us to be, which is to produce our natural resources in an environmentally responsible way, in partnership with First Nations, for the benefit of Canadians. And Canada developing world-leading clean technology that we can export to the world. That means us putting cards in Canada's hands and taking cards out of hands of governments that want to use energy policy as a tool of coercion.
So he's talked about net zero here. Just wait for it. He's getting to it. But first, they mentioned the most important thing being net zero and climate competitive, all this stuff. So I've had this on the channel before, mapping Canada's carbon landscape. The WWF, World Wildlife Foundation, mapped this out, and they found that Canada has 327 petagrams or billion tons of CO2 saved in peatlands, boglands, which they've got it all mapped out on here. You can see, so most of that stuff is stored in the first meter, the first 3 feet of peatlands and boglands. So really, if they wanted to have a climate program, they should be focusing on never digging this up, building any homes on this. They shouldn't be touching this land. They should be leaving all the boglands and peatlands across Canada. This map here shows where all the CO2 is stored. You can zoom in on it. They've mapped literally every square kilometer. So as you zoom in, which is very slow. So I'm zoomed in around Vancouver here, and every one of these little blips is a CO2 marker, and you can see it's at 2.3 million. You go over here, 2.1 million. This darker color, you can see 7.3 million. So a lot more carbon getting stored out on Vancouver Island, where I'm at here, 11.5 million. And you go up more north here and you've got 1.7 million. So they've already mapped this out. And if we look at the Government of Canada's own website here, this is right off of their website, it shows the blue here is human activities. This is how much CO2 that us, the society, is producing. This green stuff here is natural disturbances, aka wildfires. And then you can see the line here. And this line showed back in 1990, we were net negative. We were net zero. We were below net zero. We were net negative, and then it peaked up here 1995 and then dropped back down and then back up and back down. And then what happened here, where since then, look at the human activities, we're pretty low. It's the wildfires that have spiked up. And by the way, you can see the wildfires spiking up really high here. What year do you think that started? 2015. What happened in 2015? Something to think about. Is this arson season? Is that what's going on here? But going back to this, we were net negative before, and now they're talking about getting to net zero. We were already net zero. We were net negative. Well, the pine beetle infestation, all that stuff happened right in the early 2000s. You see that here. So these are pine beetle infestation. This is 2012. Mountain pine beetle epidemic in British Columbia peaked in 2004, 2005, and 2012. So basically the pine beetle infestation, because the forests were not being managed, what we need to be doing is cutting down areas of dead trees that have been planted years ago that are all the same height. Because what happens, these pine beetles, they go into a certain forest that's all of the same height because we're doing these big slashes, these big logging slashes, and then monoplanting all of the same thing, lodgepole pines, and then they get the same height. And then these pine beetles can just ravenously eat everything because they're all of the same height. If we planted things in a different way, we mixed up what trees are in these different cuts and then changed the way we do logging, we wouldn't have this problem. So if they really are serious about net zero, getting us back to net negative, that's what they would do. And they pair that with buying water bombers and heli tankers to put out these forest fires. And maybe we shouldn't have people going and lighting fires. Maybe that's what we should do. So this whole thing of net zero and doing it through industry and business is a waste of time. They know it, but that's the way they're going to make money from it. That's what's going on here. I'm convinced of it. I've been looking at this stuff for months and months and months and months now.
We are linked. We all have the same objective. The same objective is to get to net zero. And the same objective that we share with Alberta and we share with the oil industry is pathways is a really important piece of the puzzle. And it demonstrates to the world that we are the most responsible producer of energy in the world. That's what our allies want from us.
How confident are you, just as a final point on pathways, that it can deliver the carbon capture results that would be required to meet Canada's climate targets? Because carbon capture at scale has had some challenges. Other projects like the Boundary Dam in Saskatchewan was below what it hoped to get. I mean, this is still a developing technology. So
carbon capture has never yielded the results they're looking for. If they want to do this fantastical utopian thing, figure it out first. Don't force Canadians to pay for this crap.
What's your confidence level?
So what I would say is don't underestimate the power of Canadian entrepreneurial spirit, and don't underestimate the power of Canadian technology. I think the Prime Minister said, I think in his closing comments on Thursday in Edmonton, when he was a kid in school, it was called the tar sands.
Yeah.
Now it's called the oil sands. It was a dream in people's eyes. You couldn't produce it back then. It's Canadian technology and Canadian innovation that has taken that from something no one wanted to one of the most valuable resources in the world. Something no one wanted to one of the most valuable resources in the world.
To one of the most valuable resources in the world. The tar sands became the oil sands. Oil is one of the most valuable resources in the world. That just came out of his mouth. Yet there's not a pipeline on the major infrastructure project list. The Liberals have blocked pipelines. Liberals have a no pipeline law, tanker ban off the West Coast. What is going on here? Well, we know what's going on here. But he admitted it. He admitted that this is so valuable, yet they don't want to pull it out of the ground because Mark Carney's green grift is more important to these guys and enriching themselves.
Ever this lands on the climate competitiveness strategy and carbon capture and pathways and these things that we are promised maybe some development by Grey Cup, how confident are you that there is a private proponent that will rush up, raise their hand, and put their capital on the table and say, we're ready to go with this? Because there's still the BC Coast issue and other challenges.
So, look, the Prime Minister's been very clear. The end game, what are we trying to do? He wants to attract $500 billion of private sector capital to Canada. That will help us retool the economy. That will help us get people back to work who are affected by this unjust trade war.
They're going to spend all of our money on another green grift. They already did this with the EV mandate, and now it's going to be carbon capture. This is so ridiculous.
That will give us the prosperity that we...
No, it won't. It will not do it. It'll give you prosperity and Mark Carney prosperity and Julie DeBruce and any other Liberal, but not us. He admits that oil is one of the most valuable resources on Earth, yet no pipeline on the list. Meanwhile, from CTV, we've got ozone layer healing on track to recover by mid-century, coming from the UN. Oh yeah? Moving over to CTV, we've got the lead columnist for the Toronto Star. Mark Carney is pushing us down this path of carbon capture. He's unrolling big investments, yet has an austerity budget. None of this makes sense. And while I don't agree with this guy hardly ever, he's actually right here.
Sure that they do, Vashi. I think Carney may say he wants to have an austerity budget, but austerity is one of those things that sounds great in an editorial page article. It's less palatable, I think, when you're telling Canadians, here's the program you're not getting that you need because we're cutting this budget. That's very, very difficult to sell.
He's right. Austerity budget sounds nice. We're going to trim the fat. We're going to tighten the belt. But when it actually comes down to doing it, Canadians aren't going to like it.
Right. So, Rob, what do you think the timeline is for tolerance? Do you think Mark Carney has until the spring? Do you think it's that next year? Because, I mean, April 28th was not that long ago, and these are some pretty big problems.
As long as he has the enthusiastic backing of the Premier of Alberta.
That is,
yeah.
So Grey Cup, we'll see.
Yeah, he's in good shape.
Yeah.
I think that when he fails to deliver on what she's looking for, I think he might then be in trouble. But it suggests that there are very few sort of opportunities for Mr. Poilievre to attack on what I call the gimme putts, the first 5 projects. If he was looking for places to maybe go after, he might go after the next 5. Say, let's talk about those. But as long as he has the backing of Danielle Smith, he's golden.
Well,
This is interesting. They basically divided the Conservatives because Danielle Smith was being optimistic with working with Mark Carney. She's trying to get something going, and now they're trying to split Conservatives and using Danielle Smith against Pierre Poilievre. These are dirty tactics. It's not going to last, though. If there's nothing comes to fruition here quickly by Grey Cup by November, then Danielle Smith is be like, okay, you guys are not working for Alberta. You're going to see the separatist movement just start grow further. She's going to say Trudeau didn't work for the people of Alberta, and now Mark Carney's not working for the people of Alberta. This is a limited time offer here for the Liberals here. They basically have a month and a half, 2 months where they can try to milk this situation, because once that second tranche of projects come down, there better be a pipeline in there or this dog and pony show is over. Got this one here. Carney does not need to divest assets to avoid conflicts of interest, ethics watchdog says. No, not at all. This is a complete joke. So he's got his 2 gangsters here, basically his henchmen at the door. If we go to my chart here, I should note too, this chart is getting slammed by too many people, so I may have to duplicate this 10 times and have 10 different mirrored links so all of you can jump on here, but it's on moosechart.com and moosechart.ca. There's also a third link in the description. You might want to check that one out, which is already a mirror. Regardless, here's his 2 henchmen, Michael Sabia, clerk of the Privy Council, and Marc-Andre Blanchard, his chief of staff. These guys are supposed to protect Mark Carney against all these conflicts. Now, technically, Michael Sabia is Mark Carney's ethics screen, and I know I said a while ago I'm going to make a video on him. I'm still going to make a video on him, breaking it down who this guy is, but he's supposed to protect Mark Carney. Unfortunately, if you've seen this video here, we can follow this line, which goes all the way up to the CDPQ, Caisse de Dupont, Place de Quebec. That guy, while he was working here, did a deal here with Mark Carney. Right here, Brookfield raises $2.4 billion catalytic transition fund. If we follow it all the way over here to the UAE section of my chart here, we've got that fund, and there it is, Caisse de Dupont. Mark Carney did this deal with Michael Sabia. These guys are good buddies. Now he's his ethics screen. This is highly corrupt. So if that's our starting point, then you got articles like this saying that no need to divest assets. No problem at all. We got conservative John Brassard here and Michael Barrett absolutely hammering him on this because this is ridiculous.
When these the screens are set up, wouldn't that cause a reasonable person to conclude that the public office holder is in fact benefiting from those deferred stock options, units, and future bonuses, despite the fact that the blind trust is being set up? Now, if that public officer holder, for example, was a prime minister whose major policy platforms were, for example, housing, infrastructure, EV mandates, and all that stuff, wouldn't that cause a reasonable person to conclude that they are in fact benefiting, blind trusts notwithstanding, screens notwithstanding?
So I'm going to show you here soon. Mark Carney's already made millions of dollars on his stocks because of being PM.
That they are in fact benefiting as a result of the decisions that are being made, major policy decisions in this country. Wouldn't that cause a reasonable thinking person to conclude that there is in fact a conflict and that person is in fact benefiting as a result of these decisions?
Well, you have just enunciated the major argument why people don't like the idea of apparent conflict of interest, because it is possible to view things that way or other way. You can also put it the other way around, saying he's earned those deferred benefits already. He's getting them in the future. He's getting them from one of the largest companies in the country. So how can you personally be, where is the conflict of interest? There is no way that the decision will have an impact on the deferred money that he's getting in the future.
This guy's out to lunch because this is a simple math equation. I'm on the sec.gov here in America. We put in Mark Carney. There we go. So Mark Carney. So here's his 2 shares. He's got 209,000 shares at a strike price, $35, 200,000 shares, $40. This is back from December 2024. You can see there the value in US dollars, 6.8 million, which is what I've got on my board here. If we look at Brookfield's stock price here, you can see it's continually gone up. No, this is for the last 5 years. We'll just put in the last year. Mark Carney won the election rate there, $53 US. US. And where is it now? It's at $69. We also have Brookfield Asset Management, because these are multiple different companies. When we look when Mark Carney won the Liberal leadership race, is right here. So March 9th, and it was $47. Today it's $57. That's a 21% increase in the stock. And Brookfield Corporation has gone up 33%. Mark Carney has made $1.4 million increase just becoming prime minister on Brookfield Asset Management stocks. And we don't know how many stocks he owns in Brookfield Corporation, which we can see right here. So just imagine if he had $10 million in this, then he'd have nearly $14 million. It'd be an increase of $4 million plus the 1.5. He'd be up like $6 million. Now, if he's got 20 or 40 or $50 million, then he's made $20+ million just in the 6 months being prime minister. This has a huge effect on his net worth, and that's just these two stocks. Think about these other assets here that are benefiting from him becoming prime minister. This is ridiculous. Michael Barrett knows that. He's calling him out. Listen to this. The ethics commissioner trying to justify this.
Mandatory divestment and independent reinvestment remove the perception and simplify compliance. The issue, if I may, the issue with the blind trust is that you take, for example, a prime minister who would have the clerk of the Privy Council, which is a political appointment, and their chief of staff, a political appointment.
As I mentioned, Michael Sabia and Marc-Andre Blanchard
are the overseers of it, and there's no public indication when that screen has been used. And so there wouldn't be a need for a screen if the funds were simply divested and then reinvested by an expert, financial manager.
You're right, but it's a pretty simplistic solution, because you imagine you're suggesting that somebody who enters into public service, sell all his assets, can increase a great tax liability, obviously for that year, etc., and only then leave it up to a trustee to deal what's best, what the trustee thinks is best with the assets. It's something that can be done. I certainly wouldn't recommend it, because I think it would be very much discourage people from entering into public services. It would suggest that,
This is a ridiculous argument, man. You notice, too, he's got an Order of Canada pin just like Carney. This guy's saying that we don't want to scare away the good people coming to run as Prime Minister of Canada. No, what we're doing is we're attracting scoundrels to become Prime Minister, because you can rip off taxpayers and enrich yourselves. That's what's happening here. I'd rather have a hardworking plumber as Prime Minister who can think with common sense versus a greedy globalist banker like Mark Carney, who's already likely made tens of millions of dollars. Klaus Schwab Jr. here doesn't seem to get it.
If I may, Commissioner.
Great tax liability and B, also very much interference in his personal...
If I may, sir, the objective here isn't about the encouragement of folks to run for office or to avoid tax liability, so much as it is to ensure that Canadians have confidence that the decisions taken by these public office holders are those that are in the best interest of their public, and there can be no appearance of a conflict or no perception that they're taking decisions that are going to enrich themselves, and that's the root of my previous question.
Mark Carney has already made millions of dollars. This is not a question of if there's a conflict. There is a conflict, and he's making millions off of it. I think we assume that there's nothing will be done for the conflict of interest. We've reached a place of what appears to be no return when it comes to corruption allowed to operate within this government. Yeah, it seems corruption is completely allowed to lie, cheat, and steal, rip off taxpayers, enrich yourselves. That's what Canada is. We're sliding down to the level of Democratic Republic of Congo, these defunct, highly corrupt, authoritarian governments of Africa. I mean, this whole situation is ridiculous. Carney lied about it. Remember, he said, "What possible conflicts could I have, Rosemary?" Meanwhile, by his own admission, he has 100 of them. He's got more than 100, though.